Let's talk about making friends.
Okay.
That's a big subject. And I think in the digital age, it's getting even harder. Have you ever noticed how easy it is for kids to just like walk up to complete strangers and other kids and like they have this new friend at a park?
It doesn't even have to be other kids. It can be adults. Our youngest will absolutely nobody is safe walking down our sidewalk in front of our house.
He's 4.
He will come out, he will wave and say hello and hello and hello and hello until you respond. And then that's not all. He wants to know what you're doing, where you're going. And
What's your name?
Yes, and I want him to be friendly, but I also am like, we need to
Learn some
a
boundaries
little bit here
here
for
that might keep
safety
you a
and-
little safer.
Yeah, he starts walking right alongside him until he can come back home. And I'm like, let's not go too far. But yeah, it doesn't matter. Not a kid, an adult, immediate friendship.
And I think most of us have memories of making friends, and like maybe not even of making friends though, because for most of us when we were kids, it came so easily. Like you just literally go to a park and you have a new friend. You go to an event and you have a new friend. And then if your family's hung out enough, then you just stayed friends, and you went through your troubles and your challenges, but you were also just kind of still friends, in school or wherever you connected with other people. And we might take for granted that season. I know we do when we're in it.
Before we're overthinking everything.
And all the barriers start. What do they think about me? What do I think about them? Are they, my self-conscious, when they're with me, they're probably always noticing this weakness, this character flaw, this thing. And
Did I just talk too much?
Right?
Too little?
Right?
Yeah.
Do we have anything in common? Are we the same age? Are we in the same season of life?
Was that offensive?
Yeah. Will my political views align with their political views? I mean, and the list goes on and on. We become so much more critical. And I know we take for granted when we're young how easy it was to make friends. And then we get older and it gets harder and harder and harder. But the bottom line is we were made for relationship. God made us for relationship with Him and with other people. In fact, the first human crisis came in the book of Genesis before the fall. After God said, He made things and He says, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's very good. And then He says, it is not good. No sin had entered the world yet. He says, it is not good that people would be alone, that man would be alone. And then He made the woman, a companion for the man. And Adam had a relationship with God.
Right.
So that passage couldn't have been talking about Adam's relationship with God. We weren't just made for relationship with God. We were also made for right relationship with other humans. And as we get older, because it's not as easy as when we were kids, as we get older, that gets harder and harder for us to do. That kind of happened. You and I got married young.
Yeah, we did. And a lot of my friends weren't in that same season of life. I was one of the first, if not the first, of my friend group to get married. And I think they just didn't know how to relate to me. And they were trying to be loving, honestly, trying to give space for
Right.
this newlywed couple, and
They
she's
didn't know what it
married
was like to
now.
get married.
No,
And they
and
just wanted to honor that. Sure, it was well intended.
Right. So there just wasn't that same connection with those friends. And it was really hard because I felt alone for a lot of times. And part of that was because of your friends didn't feel that same.
Yeah, you and I were friends
Barrier.
when we got married, and we had been friends before, but you needed more than just that friendship. And I don't take offense to that. Obviously our relationship comes first in human relationship terms, but my friends were pretty bold when we first got married. Honestly, maybe if yours were too standoffish, mine might have been a little bit too involved.
I mean, I don't know if coming over to open wedding presents with us day after our wedding and
knew you'd bring that up.
staying while we opened every single wedding gift is a little bold. Yeah,
It
maybe,
was
maybe.
bold. Some of
You
my
know who
single
you
friends
are.
helped us open our wedding presents.
Yes.
So, and they would come over and even spend the night sometimes.
Yeah.
And hang out. We had the futon back in the mobile home back room, and
That's right.
they would hang out, and I'd stay up late with them. And so, and I kept some of my single friends longer, but when I think back to that time in my life, I had a fairly good sized friend group. It dwindled. And sometimes it dwindles and it's not even your fault. Like, sometimes you might have a falling out, but a lot of times as we get older and it gets harder and harder to make friends, it's not a falling out. It's just
time.
season of life change.
Yeah, time and different paths.
Moves you to a different job, a new state, a new location, a new church, a new purpose. And before you know it, people that you once shared your life with and they were very meaningful relationships in your life, you don't have these relationships anymore. And that can start to hurt. And it adds to the baggage.
Yeah, it can. It can. And at times the Lord even has those relationships restored. Like several of those friends that, that had space when we were first married, I'm really close to still today.
Kind of all the way back around.
And things happen, but it's natural, I think, for life to kind of take some
If we don't
space.
keep making more friends, we just slowly lose friends. And
so,
like when I talk to Pastor Jerry and others that are senior adults, they'll tell you, man, the older you get, the more and more that becomes true. Many of Ben, Manus, and Jerry and all those have told me many times, you stop attending weddings and you start attending funerals for people that you care about. And so this is a pattern of life, part of growing up. And because of all the challenges, we're critical of ourselves. We're critical of others. We become more critical thinkers because of all these challenges in our lives. We lost friends. There's pain from losing them. When it's over a falling out, we can really be afraid to open up our heart again because we don't want to get hurt like that from a significant relationship, or even just losing the relationship and it leaves the hole. And that causes grief and pain. And as we become adults and get older, we can become less and less motivated to even seek out new friendships in our lives. And before long, I hear this all the time. And I think that the technological world and the changes in our culture and society are just amplifying this, exaggerating this. I hear adults say so frequently, I just don't have any great friends. I mean, even in our small group recently, that comment was made, like, I'm an adult. I mean, I have all these acquaintances.
A lot of people that are friendly.
I see people, but I just don't have any real friendships. And I think we need to pause here and define, at least in this context, different people might mean different things when they say I don't have friends.
It's true.
But what do you feel like we're talking about? What is that deep felt need that we have when we're saying I need a friend? What are we actually saying there?
Yeah, someone that you can be honest with, that it's not a shallow thing. You can talk deep, you can talk real. They're going to be there when things are hard. You can discuss challenges and real life questions and talk about the things that the Lord's doing in your life, or the things that you're being challenged, convicted of. And
I heard
that betters you. Iron sharpening iron.
We need those people. I heard one person put it this way: levels of relationship. We all start out surface. And I think when most people are saying there's plenty of people friendly, but I don't have any friends, most of their relationships are on that surface. I'm not really known. We have this deep desire to be known and simultaneously loved. And on that surface level, it's like, I'm not really known. So if they're kind to me, well, they don't really know me. Authentic is we start to get to know that person. I know some things about you. I know some traits, some strengths, some weaknesses, some things about, and then it moves to transparent. You start getting open with me about what's going on in your life. And then the deep level of relationship is vulnerable. And how do you distinguish transparent from vulnerable? You start to learn things about me that I have to have confidence in you, because if you betrayed that information, or you could use that information or what you know about me to cause me pain. And I trust you even with those things.
That's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And I think most adults are living their lives. Maybe you could acknowledge this right now. Whether you have those kind of relationships or not, it's not healthy to not have them. We need those relationships. And God designed marriage. It should be one of those places we're vulnerable.
Right.
It should be one of those places we share that. And sadly, and this is a different podcast for another time, but sadly, even so many marriages, that kind of depth of relationship's not there. And so even in the church. And so we need these friendships, we need these relationships, but as we get older, it gets harder to make these friends. And so then we're left with the question, what do I do? How do I make friends as an adult? Because it's so hard to do it.
I think one thing that's really important in taking that step is identifying that we have an enemy. And that if this is God's design, the enemy is coming after it in an opposing way. And so trying to identify what are things that maybe lies that I'm believing, or things that I'm in my flesh that I'm dealing with, that I need to identify as such, and go to war against that in the spiritual realm. And oftentimes there's going to be a lot of things that we can physically do to make some differences there. But I think that'd be a huge starting place.
So just starting by believing if relationship matters, and if I was made for a relationship with God and other people, and if that's a core reality of being a human, Satan hates humans, hates God's design, and if love and relationship is critical, you can bet he's going to counterfeit it and attack it.
Yes.
He's going to try to get us to believe that we can be healthy and better off and in a good place and forego the effort, because there's effort, there's risk, there's sacrifice, there's suffering involved in being in a great relationship. I mean, it's like anything, right? Like you ran a half marathon recently. You calculated, I'm going to suffer training for this marathon.
Yeah, getting up at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning, not
pleasant.
No, not what I...
Not comfortable that Saturday. You know, there's a cost involved in that. The long mileage hurts. The time away from your family hurts. I mean, there's all these sacrifices that you're making to run this half marathon. But what you did is you calculated and you said, for you, and not everyone has to run a half marathon, right?
Yes.
But for you, the payout was worth the sacrifice. Well, that's particular to you. And there's plenty of things that are particular to each person. We are all calculating, making sacrifices for payouts in various ways, but universally, on a human level, the sacrifice is always worth the payout for meaningful friendships. Always. You were made for relationship. Satan wants to attack that idea and convince us I'm okay alone, I'm better off alone, being around people stresses me out, I get anxious around people, these environments are not healthy for me. They're hard. I get that. You have to struggle and work. I get that. But the fundamental biblical truth about every human person is you are made for relationships and you need them. We need relationship with God and we need relationship with each other. And so once we start to accept that, we can start overcoming some of these lies. Right. Some of these barriers that we allow into our lives, and we say, why don't I have any friends? Well, I mean, let's start simple. What do most Americans do? They go to work, they clock out the moment they're allowed. They drive home, shut their garage door, lock their front door, and turn on a screen.
Yep.
This is isolate from the world. And you say, so we shut our door and tell the world, you're not welcome here. We close our garage door and we put up the barriers. Our phones,
no soliciting
signs on our door.
Which I agree. I don't want solicitors either.
And then we go, and then we recluse ourselves and have a better relationship. And what I mean by that is dealing with our emotions and coping with things with a screen than we do with another human being. And then we say, why don't I have any friends? I mean, that's an easy one just to start with right there. And maybe that defines you. Maybe you hear that and you go, oh, okay, you're pushing on the soft spot for me personally. But it could be other things. But what is it? What are the patterns of your life that are communicating to other people you're not welcome here? That communicate to other people, I'm not available.
Right.
Well,
sometimes when we're in that too, it's like, well, I'm waiting on an invitation.
Right.
I'm waiting on an invitation. If we're looking for a relationship, yes, I would love for you to have an invitation. But also, can you be the one to make the invitation?
Right. All meaningful relationships, you have to know how to initiate, because how often are there two people waiting on an invitation that would be great for each other, would be a great friend to you, but neither is willing to initiate? And again, there's a cost. Some fear, and I've experienced this. Some people look at me and they're like, I'm on a podcast and I'm preaching. I must just be this high volume people person. No, actually, in my personality, I would actually define myself more as an introvert. Now, I think we need to define that word. I think, sometimes we hear things like, I'm an introvert. I don't know how to,
Extrovert, introvert, and
yeah,
then whatever the one is, that's the combination of the two.
right. And
And we
like,
hide behind those labels.
we label ourselves. We find our identity in being an extrovert or an introvert. And honestly, let's be honest, most people call themselves an introvert. I mean, like, even though probably if we actually got psychologically checked, there's probably a lot of people labeling themselves introverts that may or may not be.
Right.
It's maybe based more on our environment and our patterns and our habits that makes us feel that way. But being an introvert means I just recharge better when I get some time to rest alone. An extrovert, at least in how we're using it here, okay? An extrovert would be somebody who might recharge fine with other people around. In fact, they
they leave those events and they're hyped.
We have some extroverts in our small group, you know who you are, that stay late. And it's because they're getting rejuvenated by sitting there with some friends and some people that are more mature, and they're enjoying the conversation. And they lost a couple hours of sleep, but their batteries are getting better charged because they're with people, I don't recharge that way, but when I start using introvert.
But you're using an important word, which is recharge.
Yes.
And so an introvert isn't who you are.
No, it's not an identity thing.
But it may be how you rest.
That's right.
And recover best.
And when I start labeling myself as an introvert and using that, and I might really believe it. We're trying to help you recognize a lie here possibly in your life. I might really believe I'm an introvert, but then I start applying that in ways that it doesn't apply. Because I'm an introvert, I can't be around groups of people because that makes me anxious. Because I'm an introvert, I do better if I just go home and watch my screen. Because I'm an introvert, I don't want to make a phone call.
I can't send the invitation.
I can't send the invitation. And so you have these couple people. The bottom line is sometimes we use labels like introvert because other people accept them to actually give ourselves a pass for things like, I'm actually afraid of being rejected.
Right.
I'm actually afraid that we might get together and we don't have a lot in common. I'm actually afraid that if I let myself get close to someone again, then I'll be hurt again because that relationship will come to an end for one reason or another.
Right.
And the bottom line is the payout is worth the sacrifice. We were made for relationship.
Yeah, that's good.
And we have to be willing to overcome those things and to initiate. I told our small group just this last week, we're going into the summer season. For us, that means a change of pace at Together Church. We're not going to have our normal, regular storying Bible study meeting on Monday nights. And I said, why? Well, one, just a little bit of a change of rhythm and a break and some recharging, not to have burnout. But then the second reason is let's make more margin for relationship. And I encouraged them. I mean, have each other over for dinner, go on a double date. How intimidating is just going to lunch after church one Sunday? But I said, here's the problem. I can encourage you to do this, and we can buzz by these couple months of the summer.
Because time flies.
Time flies, and we get back to group, and I say, so what'd you do this summer with each other? And you might be sitting there going, I did nothing. And well, why? Because there is an important skill you must have if you're going to have meaningful relationships as an adult. You must be willing to initiate. You can't always wait on other people. How do kids make friends so fast?
Yeah, right to it.
They are all willing to
play
initiate. Just ask Adam.
Straight up.
He is ready to go on initiating, And so kids make friends fast because they initiate. And you got to be willing to initiate. You got to be willing to take the risk. You got to be willing to not take it personal if you invite someone to lunch and they don't, or they can't, or they just don't want to. And then I love this advice that we heard actually in our small group this week, also being clear about what you want. One of the people at small group said this, like, hey, I would just like to get to know you. I feel like you and I have connected well, or I've enjoyed seeing you on Sundays, or I've enjoyed being in small group with you, or whatever. I would just like to see if we can hang out a little bit. Would you like to grab dinner? Or I'd be interested in having a discipleship relationship with you. Would you like to get together and talk about that? And we talked about that in a previous episode, the importance of establishing that we are actually having a discipleship relationship here and not just assuming that that's understood.
Right.
And so just being clear about the intent, our kids might have fun playing together. You want to get together and just get to know each other and let the kids play, just being clear and clarity's kind, and just being clear about the reason and being willing to take the risk.
For sure. And I loved a advice that I had heard, and it was, don't be afraid of 5 minutes of awkward. And
yes, so good.
Take that risk of 5 minutes of awkward.
Yes.
You just never know what's going to come of it, especially if you feel like there's a prompting there.
Right.
And embrace it. Embrace those 5 minutes of awkward, because either the person's going to go on their way, nothing will come of it. They probably won't really even think about it much again,
right,
if ever. Or who knows what the Lord's going to do? Who knows what relationship's going to be formed and where that's going to go and bless you and this other person. So don't be afraid of 5 minutes of awkward.
All meaningful relationships survive awkward and conflict.
Yeah.
They have to survive that, or they never get down to vulnerable. We have to be willing to stick it out with people, take the risk, because we were made for a relationship. Where you and I, since that time that we got married, and our friendships changed a lot, yours quicker than mine, but mine also in time definitely significantly changed. My personality would have been hang on to a couple good friendships from when I was a kid and have no more friends. Yeah. I'm just talking about my flesh here.
Right.
But our relationships with other people changed a lot because we bought in to the mission of Jesus and took his command seriously, that we are to go make disciples. And when we look at the example of Jesus to say, well, what does that mean? We saw Jesus intentionally form significant, vulnerable, meaningful relationships with 12 other guys specifically. And even beyond that, some more. But those 12 specifically, even 3 within there, were even closer to him. And we look at his life and we go, look at how these friendships matter and what Jesus did to make disciples. That actually making disciples means making great friends.
Right.
That it can't be, here's my ministry people over here. Right. I don't actually want to be any of their friend. I just going to do the whole, teach them some stuff. And then I'm looking for my friendships over here. We both like the Republican or Democratic Party, or we both like the, whatever. We have all these things in common. And what you and I discovered is being in Christ unites us with a commonality. Automatically. And that when we're obedient to the call of Jesus to make disciples, we have Christ in common. And then because of Christ, we can start forming friendships. And you and I found we can form friendships with some of the candidates that we would have never expected to become our close friends.
Yeah. One of them are actually at my house right now.
What are they doing?
Keeping our kids so that I can be here.
Yep. And that's Kim.
I know Kim. Yeah. Yep. And they were in our small group and
became our apprentices.
I had no ill will towards Kim. She was a great person, totally fine. But just we are very different in our preferences.
It wasn't this natural click that happened for you guys.
And they became our apprentices in our small group. And I was a little nervous about that at the time. Not, I didn't think it was a bad idea, but just okay, well, let's see how this goes kind of thing, And they loved us so well.
Oh my goodness. They were the first ones there. We've told our story a little bit when we welcomed 3 children that were in a guardianship and they were the first, they were there when they arrived. They were at our house
that day. Yep.
And they brought gifts for the kids and loved those kids with us. I mean,
and Kim has served me weekly since then, if not multiple times a week. And they're not even in our small group anymore. We've branched small groups with them.
We don't have those regular meetings anymore. The rhythm's not the same.
But to think how I would have missed out on that friendship if I had just been picking based on, what naturally seemed to fit and go together. And God does it. God does that work.
He does. If you guys would have only met on a Sunday morning, that would have probably never happened.
Yeah.
But because of the
we'd have been fine acquaintances.
Fine. Yeah. Friendly, surface, just like we talked about, but never vulnerable like you are now. You would have been fine acquaintances. But because of obedience to Jesus on your part and Kim's part, and then for me and Jeremy, we became great friends with people that we would have never had as friends. And I look back and I think to myself, if I had embraced the mentality of my flesh, given into my fears of new relationships, shelled up into just a couple friendships that I wanted to try my best to hang on to for as long as possible and closed the garage door and pushed out the world. If that's how I lived, I can name dozens of people who are genuinely my great friends
Yes.
today. Friends I would have never had. And like you said, even when our seasons of life took us different directions so that I don't get to hang out with those particular friends as much as I want to anymore, we pick up right where we left off.
Yeah.
We're united
The
by the
connection
mission
is
of
deep.
Jesus. The connection runs deep. We love each other. And even when we're not together, because now they're disciple makers too, we are united by that common mission. And I know they're making friends too with people who need to be discipled. And we're making friends with people who need to be discipled. And we still have each other's back. And in a moment's notice, we will show up for each other and be there for each other. What an incredible gift.
A blessing to me.
Yes.
And I pray a blessing to them too.
Oh, and I believe it is.
But,
It's
wow.
almost like there's a designer who knows exactly how we're made, who we are, what we need, and that when he gave us a mission to go make disciples, he knew it would be a perfect complement to that deep human need that we were created to need filled.
So let's do it.
So let's go do it. Let's go make disciples of Jesus, and let's bring down, stop making the excuses. Let's bring
Identify
down
the lies and walk in truth.
Walk in the truth and go make disciples. You'll make some of the best friends that you've ever had. And I wonder, like, the purpose of this podcast, hopefully anyone listening is benefiting, but especially those who are in a discipleship relationship. There's a more mature follower of Jesus with someone who's growing as a follower of Jesus, and they're working together. I wonder, have you thought about each other, not just as some church commitment or discipleship commitment? Have you thought of each other as friends? Have you opened your heart to become great friends? And then are you willing, whoever's listening right now, are you willing to let down the barriers, to open the garage door, to open your front door, to turn off the screen? Friendships, relationships, they're made of real things, not counterfeit, artificial things. They're made of real things. Beyond texting, beyond social media, beyond screens, we need physical interaction. We need face-to-face, not FaceTime, face-to-face with other people that we share meals with and community with. And when we're willing to be vulnerable and open ourselves up, are there risks? Yeah. Could you get hurt? Yes, it's a possibility. Do the rewards outweigh the risk? They absolutely do, because the bottom line is you were made for relationships. You can't be healthy without them. And the mission of your King hinges on your willingness to be obedient and follow his example. And what did he do? He pressed into relationship with imperfect people and loved them. We must love each other like Christ loves us. So go talk about it, and let's do this. You can make great friends. Don't make excuses. Go make friends.